A noble genius becomes the Academy's laughingstock because he can't use modern AI magic, but he shocks everyone when he swallows a lethal drug to destroy his own heart and awakens a forbidden ancient magic inside his brain. In this video, watch how Shin Hayul rises from rock bottom to crush his bullies, humiliating top-tier mages with nothing but Tier 1 spells, thanks to the first Magic Emperor's grimoire. This story is packed with cold revenge and action, but the real shocker is, what happens when he realizes his own professor belongs to the terrifying Dark Magic Tower and is trying to mind control him with a cursed chip?
To know how he achieved this great feat, let us stop time and go back a little to tell the story of the Shin family, the most famous family in Korea, where Hayul was the third son who fell from the throne of a prodigy to the depths of oblivion. A flashback, we see Hayul standing before his father, the imposing lord of the Shin family, with confidence gleaming in his young eyes. He promised him then in a firm voice, "Father, I will achieve results that shake the earth, results worthy of bearing our ancient family name." He vowed to graduate as the top student from the prestigious Obelisk Academy, leading the Shin family to a peak of glory it had never known before. His father patted his shoulder, saying, "Remember, my son, you possess a natural talent and a gift that no one else in this world has." The father placed skyscraper-high hopes on his son, confident that he would one day sit upon the throne of the magical arts. With a smile full of secrets, Hayul reassured his father, "I will meet all these expectations, and I will never let you down." He didn't just seek to surpass his siblings, his ambition soared far beyond, aiming to even surpass his father, the holder of the title Greatest Mage in the Land. 2 years have passed since that promise. Now we find ourselves before the gates of the Obelisk Magic Academy, where reality tests the cruelty of promises. Inside the hall, the teacher announced the start of the second-year practical exam and called upon the student Sa Hyuk to begin, trying to calm his anxiety. But anxiety had no place in Sa Hyuk's vocabulary. He was a young man overflowing with vanity and an overconfidence bordering on arrogance. Sa Hyuk bragged loudly before his classmates, "Failure? I don't worry about it, because the last rank is already reserved for its permanent owner, Hayul." Sa Hyuk looked at Hayul as if he were human trash, a mere burden not even worth a glance. To him, Hayul was incapable of performing the simplest principles of magic, and he wondered mockingly, how did this failure even make it to the second year? He saw him as lagging behind, unable to keep up with AI magic, the innovation that changed the face of the world, and whose secret we shall now learn. The test began, and a terrifying holographic monster appeared before Sa Hyuk, designed to simulate the danger of real battles. In the blink of an eye, Sa Hyuk unleashed explosive fireballs, shattering the monsters with a robotic precision that was astonishing to behold. Magic had evolved thanks to AI chips implanted in bodies. They handle mana processing and eliminate the need for complex incantations, making magic instantaneous. But our hero, Hayul, is the only one who does not possess this technical privilege. When his turn came, he tried to gather mana to his heart in the ancient manual way, summoning it to a body that carries no supporting chip. But the attempt ended in a crushing and humiliating failure. The spell vanished into thin air, and the holographic monsters lunged toward him to crush him. The class erupted with laughter and mockery at the sight of Hayul's struggle, describing him as a relic of the past or an old mage whose time had ended. Students whispered to each other, "Someone like him has no place in our modern world. Magic without AI is just suicide." The monsters suddenly vanished when Hayul exceeded the time allotted for the test, leaving him alone in the middle of the arena, drowning in looks of contempt and the silence of disappointment.
Mocking laughter echoed throughout the hall, leaving a painful resonance in the soul of Hayul, who stood alone in the center of the arena. He had no choice but to sit quietly, drowning in a sea of misery after another failed attempt was added to his record. However, a flicker of satisfaction ignited deep within him. He noticed that his mana conversion speed had slightly improved, a minor progress, yet a beacon of hope for him. When he was officially labeled an AI failure, his father washed his hands of him completely, abandoning all high expectations. His father went as far as sending a nerve-shattering chemical drug, aiming to destroy the mana circle in his heart and force him out of the world of magic. But he refused to surrender to despair, choosing instead to dive into forgotten traditional magic, that grueling method requiring absolute mastery of mana without relying on digital processors. When Hayul returned to his room, he found massive piles of ancient books stacked in every corner, muttering to himself, if this knowledge were available in electronic format, it would have been much easier. While contemplating those paper stacks, his eyes fell on a strange book cover protruding from the rest, a book he had no memory of ever purchasing. Driven by curiosity, he reached out and picked up the book, then began to open its pages with extreme caution. The book appeared exceedingly ancient, its pages fragile as if they would crumble between his fingers at any moment. The script written inside was old and worn, to the point that Huel found great difficulty in decoding its ciphers. But his eyes stopped at a name that shook his very being, Rey Bal Pit Nu. A familiar name that echoed in his memory like a forgotten legend. Rey Bal was the great first mage in human history, and the founder of the Beitinu magic empire, which laid the foundation for all arts. Huel remembered his childhood when he used to read the biography of this emperor, fascinated by his unrepeatable power. Suddenly, and without warning, the book began to emit a strange rhythmic glow. The light intensified rapidly until it became so brilliant that Huel was forced to close his eyes, unable to withstand the intensity of the radiation. From the sheer surprise and awe, the book fell from his hands and struck the floor, while the light continued to emanate from it. Huel recoiled in terror from this sudden explosion of raw magical energy that filled the room. Then the impossible happened. The book began to speak, with a majestic voice echoing in the corners of the room. Not a human voice, but an echo of magic. The voice told him that he shared the same spiritual essence as the emperor Beat Nu, and that this book had been written and waited for thousands of years specifically for him. Huel stood in utter bewilderment, unable to comprehend the truth or respond to this strange entity.
That moment was the major turning point. He did not realize then that being branded a failure was, in truth, the gateway to attaining the greatest magical blessing. While his life was changing in his room, his classmates who failed the practical exam were preparing to attend boring extra lessons, unaware that their peer had begun a legendary journey. To make matters worse, Hyul was the only one who failed that test. He had no choice but silence and endurance amidst the looks of pity and disdain that followed him into every corner. But behind that pale face and wretched body, a volcano was about to erupt. The features of his rebirth were beginning to take shape from the ashes of failure. The next day, the sun rose over the academy carrying a transformation that no one had yet perceived. Students gathered in the great cafeteria, exchanging laughter and talking about their magical achievements while devouring their lunch with greed. In an isolated corner, Hyul sat alone as usual, eating his food in absolute silence, trying to avoid contact with anyone. Suddenly, a young man approached with a wide grin and asked cheerfully, "Why are you eating alone again, man? Haven't you grown tired of this isolation?" This youth was no stranger to Hyul. He was the one with the tied-back hair, overflowing with vitality, who never waits for permission before invading someone's privacy. It was Jason Shan, the friend who seems so friendly that he makes you forget for a moment that he is one of the Academy's most dangerous students. Despite his casual appearance and boyish behavior, Jason is a genius mage in every sense of the word. He is ranked among the top 10 in Obelisk and managed to form 3 complete magic circles while still 18, an achievement that baffles even professionals. Jason tried to steal a bite from Hyul's plate as his habit, provoking the latter's ire and making him shout, "Eat from your own plate and leave my food alone." Nevertheless, these small bickers were Hyul's only vent in his bleak school life, and the reason he considered Jason his only friend. Jason reassured him in a serious tone this time. "Listen, Hyul, if any of those bastards bother you, just tell me and I will take care of crushing their pride." Here, Hyul felt confident enough to decide to reveal the secret. He lowered his voice and told his friend about the strange book he had found. He said to him, "I found a book yesterday, a book unlike anything I've ever seen before." Jason was immediately excited and leaned in curiously. "A book? What kind of book?" Hyul explained that it spoke of the legend Rey Bal Pit Nu, but the strange part was that every page after the third was completely blank. Jason initially thought it was a cruel prank by the students, but Hyul described how the book glowed with light and how he heard a majestic voice calling him, leaving Jason stunned by the idea of using magic of such complexity for a mere joke. Hyul continued, "The book spoke of transferring magic to a worthy successor, and that it can only be opened by one who shares the author's spiritual essence." Jason's eyes widened and he insisted on seeing the book immediately. But Hyul hesitated, then confessed the terrifying detail he had hidden. He said with a trembling voice, "There's a line on the last page. It tells me that I must die at least once. It asks me to destroy my heart circle and form a new mana circle in my brain, and that is technical suicide." Jason was struck by panic and agitation. This is madness. Forming a circle in the brain means blowing your head off. But magical curiosity overcame his fear, and he agreed to Hyul's request to check the book for himself. As night fell in the Obelisk Academy dorms, the two friends sat before the mysterious book, tension hanging over the room like a harbinger of a magical storm that would change everything.
Huel brought out the mysterious book and presented it to his friend cautiously, asking him to try opening it himself to see if it would respond to him. With his usual curiosity, Jason Shan gripped the book and exerted all his mana strength and mental focus, but the cover remained sealed as if it were a solid slab of stone. In the end, Jason ceased his attempts, panting, which confirmed what Huel had suspected. The book only opens for one who shares Pete New's spiritual lessons. Jason wondered for a moment if a complex protection spell surrounded it, but he quickly dismissed the thought, dismissing the matter as mere nonsense or a puzzle not worth the effort. Jason left the room, bidding his friend goodbye, leaving Huel alone to face that silent and terrifying paper entity. The moment Huel reached out his hand, the book slid open in his grip with complete smoothness, as if welcoming back its rightful owner. This situation increased Huel's bewilderment and awe. What exactly did he possess to be chosen by the greatest magic emperor in history? Suddenly, a majestic transformation caught his eye. A page that had been completely blank minutes ago began to fill with golden words dancing before his eyes. Pete New's voice echoed in his mind again. Establishing the mana circle in the heart is the way of the weak and ordinary humans, those who fear the summit. He followed with a definitive tone. If you truly want to become my disciple and carry my legacy, you must abandon your limited humanity. The suicidal demand came once more. Destroy the mana circle in your heart now, and transfer your center of power to your mind, there where true magic is born. As the words slowly faded from the page, something terrifying and wondrous began to happen. A glowing golden energy emerged from the book and hovered over Huel's head, forming a dense halo of light. A glowing yellow schematic of his brain appeared in the air before him, as if ancient forces were beginning to stir from their slumber inside his skull. The voice returned, urging him insistently, "Open the book again. Do not hesitate before greatness, for fear is the Mage's first enemy." Huel became certain in that moment that what he was experiencing was no trick or illusion, especially with the repetition of the mad request to create the circle in the brain. But the dilemma lay in the fact that mana, despite being the source of power, is considered poison to the human mind. Its entrance into the brain means immediate nervous collapse. In the worst-case scenario, this process would lead to certain brain death. Huel felt that the book wasn't asking him to train, but literally asking him to commit suicide. Driven by frustration and psychological pressure, he tossed the book aside and decided to sleep, hoping the morning would bring a solution or a clearer vision. The next morning, he made his decision. He would take the book to his teacher at the academy to seek his expert opinion. He hoped the teacher would recognize the origins of this book or unravel the mystery of those forbidden spells it contained. The moment the teacher gripped the book, his facial features shifted and signs of sudden seriousness appeared upon him. The teacher noticed the ancient texts and felt that strange aura emanating from the paper. He asked Huel with a piercing gaze, "Do you truly want me to examine this book?"
Hayul answered his teacher in a tone filled with plea, asking him to check if the book was sealed with a hidden magic invisible to the naked eye. The teacher's eyes gleamed with curiosity as he asked, "And why do you think that, Hayul?" The boy feigned confusion, replying that strange rumors had been circulating among the students about this book recently. The teacher shot him a sharp, dissatisfied look, warning him, "Preoccupying yourself with student superstitions won't help your studies, but I will examine it for you. Go now and focus on your lessons." After a meticulous examination that took some time, the teacher returned to tell him in a definitive tone, "I have checked every inch of this paper. There are no traces of magic here. It is just an ordinary ancient book." He handed the book back, saying mockingly, "Put the ghost stories aside, my son, and look to your academic future, which is teetering." Hayul reclaimed the book and returned to his room, disappointment squeezing his heart. He had hoped the teacher would unravel its mystery, but the ambiguity only grew more complex. However, a strange spark of excitement ignited deep within him. He thought to himself, if an expert teacher like him couldn't even see what I see, or open what I open, then this means the book is indeed real, and its power transcends the perceptions of these modern mages. He locked himself in his room for long hours, drowned in deep thought that tore his being between fear and ambition. Ultimately, his trembling hand reached out to pick up the medicine bottle sent by his father, those poisons intended to break him. Those pills were the official end of his career as a field mage, the final ticket to his exile into the depths of boring theoretical studies. His father wanted to destroy his talent to protect him from failure, but Hayul saw them as a means of liberation. He realized that if he wanted to follow the forbidden path drawn by Pete New, there was no escape from destroying his old circle with his own hand. His eyes stared at the pills in his palm, his hands shaking incessantly. "My life is already at rock bottom, so what harm if this attempt kills me? Death is easier than this humiliation." With a deep sigh full of suicidal determination, he threw the pills into his mouth, a massive gamble with his life to awaken the mana circle in his brain. The moment the pills settled in his stomach and their chemical effect began to circulate, a searing, tearing pain exploded in the center of his chest, as if a poisoned dagger had been plunged into his heart. He felt clearly the mana circle connected to his heart cracking, then shattering into thousands of painful shards. That was the moment his old self died. As he struggled with the agonies of pain, he began to push the raging mana toward his brain with all his will he possessed. In that decisive moment, a new mage was born. Mana flowed through the forbidden pathways of his mind for the first time in the history of modern magic. The violent pain began to fade slowly, leaving behind a sensation of numbness. He truly thought his soul would leave his body from the intensity of the shock. But suddenly, Rei Bal Pete Nu's voice returned to fill his being, a familiar voice echoing from the depths of his mind, not his ears. The majestic voice asked him, "Soul Heir, do you hear me?" It wasn't Pete Nu's voice alone. There was another strange artificial voice, made of pure mana, as if his mind had connected to a cosmic magical network.
The elements around him began to manifest in his consciousness: light, darkness, wind, and earth. He saw them as if they were dancing in a majestic harmony with the new flow of mana in his veins. He heard hidden voices, the voices of the elements laughing and singing, blessing his rebirth, as if the entire universe were welcoming him into this legendary existence. The next morning, golden sunlight seeped through his room's windows, awakening Hayul from his deep slumber after the night of transformation. He sat, leaning back, examining his limbs and body in awe. He was checking if he still belonged to the world of the living, or if his suicidal attempt had carried him to the other side. As he looked around, his wonder unabated, he noticed the mysterious book lying beside him on the bed. The moment he picked it up, the miracle occurred again. The pages that had been blank yesterday began to fill with living words and symbols, forming before his eyes. Rei Bal Pete Nu's voice echoed in the depths of his mind with solemnity. "You did it, boy. You have survived the narrow passage." The ancient mage congratulated him on taking his first step on the path of greatness and informed him that this book bears a sacred name, Madrid. The voice announced that this moment was the official beginning of the legend of Shin Hayul, for the book contains within its folds all the forbidden and secret spells created by Pete Nu throughout the ages. Now, as the sole successor, Hayul was no longer just an heir to this ancient vanished magic, but he officially became the direct disciple of the greatest mage known to history, carrying a legacy feared by kings and emperors. Hayul felt an overwhelming joy and excitement flowing in his heart. The idea of being Pete Nu's successor made his ambition touch the sky. Several days passed since that transformation, and Hayul was trying to comprehend the new powers that had begun to surge in his mind. In one of the boring lectures, while the teacher was explaining modern magic theories, Hayul was completely absent-minded, drowned in the pages of his book, Madrid. To his surprise, a new page appeared, filled with complex information about the nature of mana. He discovered a terrifying truth. Mana possesses a will of its own, a wild will that does not submit easily. And upon its entry into the brain, a violent collision occurs between the mage's will and the mana's will, destroying nerve cells. For this reason, everyone considered mana a lethal poison for the brain. But he realized with amazement that his new brain circle acts as a fortified fortress, preventing the mana's will from controlling his mind and subduing it completely. For this same reason, his mind gained an absolute immunity against the interference of AI chips that impose their control over the brain functions of the rest of the students. Suddenly, the teacher's voice rose, cutting his train of thought and drawing the entire class's attention. The teacher announced in a firm tone, "Prepare yourselves, everyone. The time has come for the evaluation exams for the second-year students." Then he added with a mysterious smile, "But there is a completely new and different rule that will be applied in this year's exams."
The teacher continued in an icy tone. "Any student who fails to achieve the required standards will be expelled immediately. The words are final, and there is no room for exceptions here." The teacher explained that this new rule did not come from a vacuum, but was the result of higher-level decisions. He revealed the surprise, saying, "This system was personally proposed by the great head of the Shin family." The news fell like a thunderbolt on everyone's ears. Whispers of panic rose among the students, and the tension grew suffocating. Everyone imagined the worst-case scenarios, except for Sayuk, who wore a wide grin, relishing the idea of getting rid of the trash polluting the academy's reputation. Even the teacher could not hide his sadistic smile, enjoying the sight of terror taking hold of his students' faces. It was no wonder everyone directed looks of anger and frustration toward Hayul. They saw him as the reason for this crackdown, but he was drowned in his own world, indifferent to everything happening around him. After the charged school day ended, Hayul left the academy with the secret surging through his veins. As he walked through the crowded city streets with digital lights filling the place around him, he passed by a famous commercial training facility known as the AI Training Center. He hesitated to enter due to the exorbitant fees for the simulation devices. Despite the fact that a single hour costs a massive fortune, he eventually decided that the experience was worth every penny. The employee greeted him with artificial warmth, presenting him with the list of available services at the center. Hayul booked an hour for himself, and the employee asked in surprise whether he would undergo the training alone without a companion or instructor. Hayul nodded in the affirmative while pulling out his card. The employee handed him the entry card and directed him to room 4 to receive instructions on using the holographic equipment. But Hayul simply took the card and said confidently, "I know how it works, no need for explanations," then proceeded toward his room with steady steps. It didn't take long for the employee to realize the boy's identity. He is the son of the Shin family, the failure famous for his inability to use the magic of the age. The moment he entered room 4 and closed the door, the devices began to operate, emitting a faint hum of energy. The training launched, and a group of terrifying holographic monsters manifested surrounding him on all sides with their protruding teeth. The beasts roared with a powerful growl that shook the corners of the room upon seeing him, ready to pounce. Hayul extended his hand with total confidence. Although these monsters are of a low classification, facing 10 of them at once is suicide for any ordinary student. The record time for Academy students in the Wolf Challenge is 1 minute and 30 seconds, but Hayul was planning something that transcends human numbers. He had trained daily on the forbidden techniques written in his ancient book, and he found no better opportunity than this to test the extent of his progress. In a fleeting moment, he activated the new mana circle in his brain, causing energy to flow with sharpness and coldness through his nerves. He summoned the magic silently and without any AI chip, letting the power explode from his body, announcing the beginning of the holographic massacre. Hayul unleashed his magic with terrifying focus. Massive waterfalls poured down like torrential rain, sweeping away all the monsters in a single decisive strike that left no trace of them. A feeling of immense pride in his achievement washed over Hayul, though he still lived in a state of disbelief. Was all this staggering power truly his own? While the rest of the mages rely on circulating mana through their hearts to serve AI chips, Hayul was breaking every known rule of magical physics. He had become capable of circulating mana through his entire body up to his brain, thanks to the infinite circle that finally liberated his suppressed powers. He tried to summon an even larger spell, but its power was so immense it nearly exceeded his body's capacity to endure. He felt his body groaning under the weight of that force, as if collapsing before the grandeur of the ancient magic flowing within him. In that critical moment, Pete New's voice echoed in his mind. "Do not be surprised by this weight. You still have a long and arduous road to travel." The legendary mage explained to him that the infinite circle is but the foundation of Pete New's complex style. For this magic relies on manifesting images formed in the mind and turning them into reality, and this is just the first step in the book known as the heart structure. After this intense experience that changed his concepts, Hayul left the training center with calm steps. The employee entered to clean the room, preparing to go home, boredom masking his face. But curiosity overcame him, so he decided to check the results log of the fallen genius who had used the room moments ago. Suddenly, his arrogant smile vanished, replaced by the pallor of death. He saw on the screen that Hayul had completed the Wolf Challenge in just 1 minute and 10 seconds, a staggering record that places him among the ranks of professionals in international competitions. The employee kicked his device in disbelief and shouted in bewilderment. There must be a mistake. An incompetent failure like him couldn't possibly achieve this impossible number. As for Hayul, he was walking the streets with a confidence he had never known before, realizing that this was but the beginning of a legend of which he would be the sole hero. He remembered his suffering when he formed the infinite circle for the first time. The task was grueling, it's soul-draining. The techniques in the book Madrid were completely strange. The book explains that the limbs, heart, and mind must move as a single entity with a unified will. At first, he did not understand the meaning of those mysterious words. Trying to reach enlightenment through vague texts was mentally exhausting. He felt as if the truth lay behind a transparent curtain. He could see it and almost touch it, but it still slipped through his fingers. In the sciences of magic, this stage is called the Wall of Enlightenment, where the mage hits the limits of their powers, an obstacle that has faced the greats throughout the ages. Hayul decided to focus for now on circulating mana throughout his entire body, as the book commanded, though he still wondered if this alone was enough. And when he fully regained his focus, he realized with amazement that he had been managing mana for consecutive hours. In a normal situation, this effort would have been enough to make him lose consciousness from exhaustion. But, suspiciously, he felt no fatigue. On the contrary, a slight dissatisfaction overcame him, because the threads of morning had appeared on the horizon before he had had enough of his training. He longed to spend more time honing his powers, and continued to circulate mana even as he took his first steps out of the dormitory toward the academy. On the way, he bumped into his friend Jason Shawn, who greeted him with an enthusiastic slap on the back, as was his habit. Jason asked curiously, "Why do you seem drowned in another world today? Has exhaustion got the better of you?" Jason did not realize the truth of what his companion was going through. Remaining in a state of absolute consciousness to circulate mana around the clock is no easy task, but Huyul was determined to tame his new circle until it became part of his instinct. Huyul remembered his past, when he was able to form his second magic circle while still only 12 years old. At that time, he was nicknamed the Miracle Genius, and the Shin family shook with joy at his extraordinary talent. His father placed skyscraper-high hopes on him, seeing him as the leader who would guide the family to the pinnacle of glory. Now, he starts from zero with the first circle in his mind, and despite the ambiguity of the path, he realized that breaking the wall of enlightenment is his only way to supremacy. He recalled his father's old advice when he still believed in him. "My son, perfection is merely a shackle hindering your soul, a lie born from the arrogance of humans who fear the unknown." Now, he will deeply believe that seeking traditional perfection is a trap. He decided to focus on free growth to enhance his abilities without constraints. As he sat to meditate in the silence of his room, mana began to flow into his body in a completely different way. He felt the energy surging through his limbs, piercing his arms and legs, and settling in his heart and mind in a stunning harmony. Mana no longer resisted him. Instead, it moved at a signal from his thought, as if it were an extension of his soul. He realized that creativity and wild imagination are the true keys to making instant magic possible. Instant magic is the ability to release power without needing to utter a single incantation, which is what everyone strives for. Modern AI magic relies on shortening incantations through chips to activate spells at digital speed. But the method Huyul follows belongs to another world. It's about liberating thought from any technical medium. He innovates a flexible spell, a spell that changes its shape and function with complete freedom, ignoring sterile traditional magical formulas. Although this type of magic drains the body in a violent and exhausting manner, he could not believe he was applying something considered impossible in history books. He felt the wall of enlightenment cracking before him. He launched his imagination towards higher horizons, ready to face the world with a power no mage before him had known. The next day, within the Academy's corridors, the atmosphere was charged with omens of a storm that would shift the balance.
The teacher cut the hall's silence with a grave tone. "Huyul, there is a high-ranking visitor waiting for you at the reception. Follow me immediately." The teacher's words hit Huyul like a thunderbolt. A vague sense of anxiety unsettled his being, as if he sensed the identity of the newcomer. He followed with heavy steps until they reached the luxurious reception room. The teacher whispered in his ear, "Your father is the one who came to see you." The blood froze in Huyul's veins for a moment. The moment the door opened, prestige manifested in the form of his father, the lord of the Shin family, sitting with a solemnity that imposed silence upon the room. The teacher bowed respectfully, saying, "Great lord, I have brought your son Huyul as you commanded." The father turned slowly, as if his movement were shifting a mountain of atmospheric pressure in the room. He cast a look cold as ice toward his son, a gaze devoid of any paternal emotion, then signaled the teacher to leave. The door closed, leaving father and son face to face in a silent struggle, interrupted only by their breathing. The father began his speech in a bitter disappointment. "You are still here. Your presence in this academy is no longer anything but an insult to our family name." He continued cruelly, "This means you were too cowardly to take the medicine I sent you, the drug that would have freed you from the illusion of magic." Huyul raised his head and answered in a steady voice, "I didn't take it because I have made stunning progress recently. My magic has begun to awaken in a way you've never known." Not a hair on the father's face moved. Instead, he asked with pitiless mockery, "Are you still wasting your precious time chasing a hopeless dream? Magic without technology is merely a mirage." Huyul accepted the challenge of his father's gaze and asserted firmly, "My dream is not hopeless. I am determined to become the great mage who leads this new era." This unprecedented boldness in his son's reply caught the father's attention for the first time. His eyebrow rose with curiosity mixed with contempt. The father said coldly, "You have wasted many years of your life on illusions, and now it is time for reality to slap you and for you to face the truth." He emphasized his words. "The reality is that no matter how hard you work now, and no matter how brilliant your future achievements may seem to you, as long as you reject AI magic, you will never be recognized as a true mage in this modern world." He paused for a moment, then acknowledged his son's unique talent in a twisted way. "You have a brilliant mind. If you abandon these empty dreams and study only magic theory, you might become a useful researcher, even if you remain an outcast." But Huyul interrupted him decisively, reaffirming his unshakable stance. He said with total clarity, "I will not abandon my path in magic, nor will I settle for the crumbs of theoretical knowledge." He completed with eyes shining with a strange light. "I don't want a quiet, ordinary life, and I don't want to hide behind my family name as a shield protecting me from failure." He threw his final bomb in the face of his stunned father. "What I truly want and what I will achieve is to be the next head of the great Shin family myself." His father interrupted him in a stern tone that shattered the room's silence.
Becoming a great mage or the head of the family is not just words spoken, it cannot be achieved by mere ambition and empty dreams. Hayul smiled with a cold steadiness his father had never seen before, asserting in a confident voice, "I will prove it to you through actions, not words, and you shall see for yourself." The father furrowed his brows in a frown and asked mockingly, "Are you talking about merely surpassing the Academy's meager standards to avoid expulsion? Is that the ceiling of your ambition?" Hayul responded with a resounding bombshell. "Rather, I promise you, father, in the upcoming midterm exam, I will secure my place among the top 10 in the entire Academy." He followed with the tone of a final wager. "If I fail, I will pack my bags and leave the Academy immediately to devote myself to theoretical studies as you wish, and you will never hear of my magic again." He continued, sparks flying from his eyes. "But if I succeed, you will acknowledge my talent as a true mage before everyone and pledge your full support to me as your successor." The father placed his hand over his face in bewilderment, wondering inwardly about the source of this blind confidence that had suddenly possessed his failed son. Hayul did not utter another word. He stood with dignity and turned his back to leave, but his father stopped him at the door with one final word. The father said with a cutting coldness, "It is better for you to not disappoint me again. My patience with your failures has completely run out." Hayul left the room, leaving behind promises that might seem in his father's eyes as mere useless achievements that would never be fulfilled. A few days passed, during which a strange tension pervaded the Academy's corridors, as if everyone was waiting for the storm. The teacher summoned all the students for an important announcement, seriousness masking his features. "Listen, everyone, we will now reveal the system for the upcoming exam." Students began to whisper in panic. Will it be a fight against monsters, or a test of mana purity? Expectations filled the hall. But the teacher cut through the doubt with certainty when he announced, "The exam this time will be a single elimination tournament, a direct face-to-face magical duel." He added, clarifying, "The tournament will last for 3 days, and starting from the round of 16, major corporations and members of the Magic Tower will be allowed to attend the matches as spectators and evaluators." The teacher urged everyone to give their utmost, warning them that the eyes of the world would be fixed on them. For Hayul, this was the golden opportunity he had been waiting for, the platform upon which he would display his true capabilities before the public. News of the tournament spread like wildfire among the students, becoming everyone's primary preoccupation. In every corner, everyone was talking about power, alliances, and potential duels. Hayul could not ignore the buzz. The presence of the Magic Tower meant attracting global media, making a victory there a ticket to eternal glory. For the Magic Tower is not just an organization, but an entity comprising the world's most powerful mages, possessing influence that rivals entire nations, and every student's dream is to gain their recognition. While Hayul was drowned in his ambitions, a familiar and annoying voice pierced his ears, calling him by his old, hated nickname. "Hey, failure?" Hayul turned slowly, intense annoyance appearing on his face. Who dared to interrupt his thoughts at this decisive moment?
Hayul didn't need to hear his voice to know his identity. Merely seeing the shadow of this person was enough to ruin his mood entirely. It was the arrogant Sa-hyuk, the unbearable second-year student. Despite his academic standing, his presence spreads venom wherever he goes. Sa-hyuk approached with a malicious smile and dropped his news. "The draw has put us together, Hayul. We will be opponents in the first match of the midterm evaluation." Sa-hyuk was overflowing with overconfidence, believing that Hayul had fallen into a trap with no exit. He stared deep into our hero's eyes with defiant looks. He announced with a voice full of spite, "I will finally take my revenge. I will pay you back twofold for what happened 5 years ago in that cursed tournament." Here, memory takes us back. 5 years ago, when they were both younger and more innocent, Hayul defeated his rival Sa-hyuk in a humiliating loss in the finals of the Youth Magic Tournament, a victory that earned him the title of the world's lone mage of his generation, before his incompatibility with AI magic was discovered. Since that moment, Sa-hyuk began bullying him relentlessly, attempting one insult after another to break his remaining pride. Sa-hyuk reminded him of the teacher's harsh words. "Remember, failure this time means a humiliating expulsion, and I will be the person who tosses you outside these academy walls." Sa-hyuk burst out laughing, imagining Hayul broken and defeated, crying at his feet before the media lenses. But Hayul saw this draw as a golden opportunity to silence this arrogant fool forever. He replied with biting sarcasm, "You are the one who will face loss again, Sa-hyuk. It seems you haven't learned the lesson yet." Hayul's sudden confidence ignited Sa-hyuk's rage. He had expected to see him trembling with fear. Annoyance was clear on his facial features, as if Hayul's words had touched a sensitive nerve in his wounded pride. Sa-hyuk tried to salvage the situation by laughing loudly to draw the other students' attention and embarrass Hayul before them. He shouted mockingly, "Have you been hit in the head? How can a defective and technically rejected person like you do anything against my AI magic?" Hayul let out a tired sigh, as if replying to this fool was hard labor, then directed a sarcastic hint that struck home.
He said coldly, "You haven't changed at all over the years, still as loud and annoying as you were 5 years ago, all bark and no bite." Those words were enough to shake Sahyuk's confidence and return him to his old moment of breaking. But Hyul didn't stop there. He continued to press on his wounds to further provoke his anger. Finally, Sahyuk completely lost his temper and snapped before everyone. He lunged violently and grabbed Hyul's shirt collar with a strong grip, his eyes burning with a desire to kill. Hyul remained perfectly calm, and with a swift, firm movement, he forced that filthy hand off him with a strength that made Sahyuk stumble backward. He looked at him with condescension and clarified the bitter truth. "A stupid person like you will never understand that falling only happens to those who were once at the peak. As for you, you have always been at the bottom."
Hyul followed with words that fell like a thunderbolt. "One born a genius remains a genius, and I am ready to prove that before everyone in the arena." Hyul left the place with a deadly calm, leaving behind the noise of whispers and the glares of hatred. Sahyuk remained in his place, anxiety gnawing at his insides. He began to bite his nails nervously at that terrifying confidence his opponent displayed, yet he stayed determined to crush him and shatter his pride in the upcoming evaluation. The next day, the Academy woke up to unprecedented noise. Hyul had become the primary talk of forums and social media platforms. Everyone wondered, can the fallen genius truly return to the peak? As Hyul followed the news, a wave of satisfaction and confidence washed over him. Hyul realized that the offensive articles published were orchestrated by Sahyuk and his influential family, aiming to humiliate him and tarnish the Shin family's reputation. But what his rival considered a weapon against him, Hyul saw as an irreplaceable golden opportunity. For the more the spotlight shone on him and the audience paid attention to his movements, the more it served his grand plan for a comeback. Hyul received a sudden phone call from his father, who told him in a sharp tone that he had reviewed those controversial articles. Hyul tried to reassure his father coldly, "I will not let you down, father, and I will maintain the prestige of our name in the arena." The father inquired skeptically if he had arranged everything. Hyul confessed frankly to his father, "I provoked Sahyuk intentionally to draw public attention. I want the whole world to watch what I will do." The family head replied sternly, "The only reason I accepted your wager is my certainty that the danger of your failure will not shake the family's foundations destructively." Nevertheless, the father did not hide his concern that this media scandal might bring shame to the family if his son lost the duel. Hyul replied calmly, "People already believe I've been expelled from the family or that I'm an outcast, so even if I fail, the impact on the Shin name will be minimal." His father reminded him in a definitive tone, "A minimal impact doesn't mean no impact. Remember that the Shin family name will haunt you like your shadow wherever you go." Hyul agreed with his father's view, but asserted insistently, "The gains we will achieve in the end are worth this slight risk." His father asked him mockingly, "And what gains are you talking about? How will your victory in a school tournament benefit a family that possesses everything?" Hyul announced with a confidence that shook the phone receiver, "The greatest gain the family will obtain is me, father. I will become the greatest mage to ever set foot on Earth, the mage to whom everyone will submit, and I will be the strongest head in the long history of the Shin family. This means my existence is the biggest investment you've ever made." The words carried a legendary weight, as if Hyul were announcing the birth of a new era for the family at his hands. His father commented with mockery not devoid of amazement, "With this confidence of yours, you sound as if you've already defeated the master of the magic tower and surpassed his power." Hyul smiled and replied with his usual unshakable coldness, leading the family head to finally end the call and leave his son's fate in his own hands alone.
His father delivered his final warning in an icy tone. "If you bring shame to the family after all this pretension, be prepared to bear consequences you cannot imagine." The father ended the call coldly. Hyul placed his phone on the table, and silence pervaded the room. Hyul felt a confidence he had never known before. He knew the stage had been set, and the world's lights were now fixed upon him, waiting for the final performance. The promised midterm evaluation day arrived, and the Academy held its breath in anticipation of the grand confrontation. The arena was filled with high-ranking mages and media personnel. We see Hyul standing calmly, performing wrist warm-ups in preparation for the challenge. Sahyuk asked mockingly, "Did you read the article, genius? You've become the talk of the town before the tournament even started." He burst out laughing, imagining Hyul's defeat without being able to cast a single spell. Hyul replied in a tone even more mocking and steady, "Save your laughter for yourself, Sahyuk, because you are the one who will taste the bitterness of loss here before everyone." To further provoke him, he added coldly, "In fact, I should thank you for allowing me to manipulate you like a puppet to draw the audience's attention." He completed while staring into his rival's eyes,
Since we cannot stand each other, I will end this quickly. I have no time to waste on someone of your shallow level. Hyuk tried to maintain his composure, though the veins in his face nearly burst from the rage suppressed behind the mask of arrogance. Suddenly, Hyul raised his index finger in his rival's face before thousands of spectators. He announced in a calm, confident voice that shook the arena, "I will defeat you using only first-level spells, one circle, and I won't need more than that." Hyul's bold declaration echoed throughout Obelisk Academy, and a silence tinged with bewilderment among the attendees. The audience's excitement ignited. The challenge was no longer just a duel, but a public insult to a mage using the latest AI technologies. Hyuk could barely restrain his urge to attack before the whistle. The humiliation had begun to eat away at his pride before everyone. He felt that people's looks had shifted from pity for Hyul to questioning his own ability to withstand this challenge. The referee blew the resounding starting whistle, turning everyone's attention toward the arena that would host the conflict. The referee officially announced the start of the midterm evaluation test for second-year students. Let the duel begin. Hyuk launched the attack immediately without wasting a single second, desiring to crush Hyul before he could gather his strength. He utilized his advanced AI, which began processing magical data at high speed, his chip glowing. He unleashed a massive, concentrated fireball towards Hyul, a spell that was supposed to end the duel in its first moment. But Hyul, with a stunning, fluid movement, dodged the fireball by simply tilting his body as if he had anticipated its path before it even launched.
Hyuk gave him no chance to rest and began preparing for his next move. The chip implanted behind his neck started flashing with a rapid red light as a result of the immense pressure. The signals indicated that Hyuk had completely lost his patience. He proceeded to charge a third-level, 3-circle spell, a very advanced level for second-year students. He aimed to end the duel with a single crushing blow that would erase Hyul from the arena and restore his wounded pride. The moment the spell was released, a massive wave of fire and explosions erupted, completely covering Hyul's body with a dense cloud of black smoke. Everyone in the stands held their breath. A general belief prevailed that this was the inevitable end and that Hyuk had crushed the former genius forever. An arrogant smile of victory formed on Hyuk's face, but it quickly vanished, replaced by bewilderment as the smoke began to slowly dissipate. Hyul appeared standing in his place, towering, without a single scratch on his body or even a burn mark on his clothes. Hyuk felt madness and jealousy eating at his insides. How could someone without an AI chip survive an explosion like that? He lost his mind and began throwing fireballs one after another without stopping, in a random fashion lacking any strategy. As for Hyul, he remained as calm as the sea. He contented himself with summoning precise amounts of water, moving them with innate brilliance. He formed a thin water shield, yet it was as solid as steel, parrying all the explosive attacks with a simplicity that incensed his rival. Hyuk stood stunned, panting from the intensity of the effort and mana depletion. He could not believe that his signature spells, enhanced by the latest AI algorithms, had been thwarted with such humiliating ease. In the private booth, there were expert eyes monitoring every movement. Important figures noticed that what Hyul was doing broke modern magical logic. One of them muttered, "This is impossible. No mage can cast counterwater spells with this extreme speed, even if they're only from the first circle." The assistant standing beside one of the mysterious figures asked curiously, "Sir, why did you leave your urgent duties at the Azure Tower and come to watch a simple student match? Do you know something about this boy?" The answer met her in a calm tone. "I know nothing of him except what I read in that controversial article about the return of the fallen genius," he completed, his eyes never leaving Hyul. "I came driven by a curiosity I haven't felt in decades." The assistant was surprised that her superior came by mere chance, but she alerted him to the seriousness of the situation. She whispered, "If people find out that the leader of the Azure Tower and the legendary 8th Circle Mage is present here, the world at the Academy will turn upside down." The man acknowledged with a slight smile, "I know that well. It was Kim Kang, the master of the Azure Tower, one of the most powerful mages on Earth." He followed, "And this is why we are standing here behind the one-way glass, to ensure our presence isn't noticed by intruders or the press." But suddenly, Kim Kang's aura sensed another prominent figure entering the arena. As he turned slowly to see who was coming, he didn't need to turn to confirm the identity of the newcomer. The aura emanating was so familiar that the senses could not mistake it. Yes, it is our hero's father, the lord of the Shin family, who came to monitor his son's suicidal wager from behind the curtain. Meanwhile, in the heart of the arena, Hyul stood with the steadiness of mountains and the calm of the confident, as if he were on a stroll, not in a life-or-death struggle. As for his opponent, Hyuk, he began to bite his nails hysterically. All the digital tricks he relied on had shattered against this steadfast human wall. What truly tore at Hyuk's nerves was the inverted logic. How could a first-grade water spell crush a third-grade fiery explosion? Huyul's spellcasting speed exceeded the processing speed of his opponent's AI chip, a feat never heard of before. Our hero decided to add insult to injury and crush his rival's remaining pride, asking coldly, "Do you truly want to know the secret behind my speed, or can your mechanical mind not handle the truth?" Of course, Sa-hyuk was no longer able to endure more of this public humiliation before the eyes of the high mages. He completely lost his temper and exploded in a resentful scream, losing every ounce of strategic focus. He began unleashing a volley of fire projectiles randomly and madly, turning the arena into a blazing hell with no plan but destruction. When he launched his final, greatest attack, Huyul vanished amidst the rising flames, and the crowd held their breath. Sa-hyuk breathed a sigh of relief with a distorted smile of victory, confident that this blow had settled the matter and buried his rival under the ashes. But, oh, the horror of the shock. When the dust cleared, Huyul was found standing at the same spot, his clothes well groomed as if the fire had never touched him. Huyul waved his hand in slow, provocative movements, inviting his opponent to approach closer with an irritating coldness. Then Huyul launched his first counterattack. A wind spear shot out like lightning, passing directly beside Sa-hyuk's right ear. Sa-hyuk felt the gust of cold air piercing through his scream. Now frustration and terror began to seep into the marrow of his bones. He wondered madly, how did he release a wind spear at this speed without incantations? And why didn't my fires scratch him even by a fraction? Huyul realized he wasn't fighting, but being dragged to the edge of madness by simple first-grade spells. Our hero did not hesitate to confirm these suspicions. Huyul confessed explicitly and out loud, "I want to humiliate you completely and crush your ego piece by piece before I allow you to be defeated." Huyul launched another wind spear, but this time it targeted the body directly. Sa-hyuk managed somehow, driven by survival instinct, to parry the direct blow at the last second. Sa-hyuk arose with false pride, trying to regain his collapsing psychological balance. He began to scream in hysterical mockery, "Don't get ahead of yourself, Huyul. Mere extra speed won't save you from the true power of my AI."
Our hero was in no mood to listen to Sa-hyuk's empty drivel. His response was practical and swift, to prove to him the extent of his ignorance of the truth. While Sa-hyuk was drowned in a false euphoria from parrying the previous blow, an unexpected wind spear pounced from the heart of the sky like a thunderbolt. The spear pierced the air to strike his arm with a severe injury. The terrifying part was that Sa-hyuk didn't even notice when or how Huyul released that hidden spell. Huyul raised his finger with calm steadiness, prepared to showcase a new chapter of his skills that break the laws of magical physics. Sa-hyuk appeared psychologically and physically defeated, unable to do anything but wonder madly, how does Huyul do all this without a chip? Even Kim Kang, the master of the Azure Tower, could not take his eyes from the battle for a single second. The boy's genius had completely captivated him. Huyul was superior by leaps and bounds, appearing ready to go much further, challenging his collapsed rival to see what remained in his arsenal. He spoke in a tone marked by the arrogance of victors. "Don't you see that this battle is starting to drag on more than necessary? It is time to get serious." With a simple signal from his palm, Huyul unleashed the power of the wind in a different manner. A group of sharp, cloaked wind birds shot towards Sa-hyuk, surrounding him from several directions simultaneously. The attack left Sa-hyuk in total bewilderment and extreme panic, for the winds were moving like living beings with a will of their own. It was technically impossible for a wind spear to possess the property of simultaneous dual release, so Sa-hyuk's digital logic failed to explain what was happening. Huyul confessed coldly, "Yes, what you see is true, but your limited logic will not help you understand the how." He explained condescendingly that he's capable of launching dual and complex attacks, then challenged his rival with a provocative smile. "Try to parry the next attack if you can." He announced clearly, "I will now send 4 simultaneous attacks from different directions. Get ready." Sa-hyuk hurried, trembling, to summon the strongest magical barrier his chip possessed, trying to survive at any cost. With great difficulty, he managed to protect his front from the direct hit, breathing a sigh of relief for a moment. He felt a delusional flicker of hope, thinking that as long as he could defend, he still had a chance to stay in the game. But in the same moment, one of the wind spears performed an impossible aerial flanking maneuver to sink into Sa-hyuk's back with force, while he was oblivious and reassured by his front barrier. Our hero didn't waste the opportunity to mock him again. "Good thinking, Sa-hyuk, but you shouldn't stand frozen like an idiot while death surrounds you." He reminded him in a definitive tone, "The battle has barely begun, and you must prepare yourself for what is much worse than mere wind stings." And once again, without the slightest mercy, Huyul launched a new offensive wave that exceeded all that preceded it in power and speed.
Sa-hyuk retreated a few quick steps backward, desperately trying to regain his lost balance. He aims to create enough distance between himself and that human hurricane, thinking that space might grant him safety. He hoped to move out of the lethal range of the wind spears, believing that every magic has geographical limits that cannot be crossed. Hayul realized his opponent's plan. In traditional magic, if the target succeeds in moving far enough away, the accuracy of attacks weakens. Hayul mockingly praised Sa-hyuk's quick wit. He said coldly, "Good thinking and skillful steps, but you were still measuring things by your limited standards." Hayul clapped both hands together firmly, directing his magical will toward the atmosphere surrounding the arena. Suddenly, the wind spears extended, and their speed doubled illogically to reach the body of the terrified Sa-hyuk. Even from that distance he believed was safe, the winds pierced his defenses to remind him that his escape was futile. Kang stood completely stunned in his booth watching this violation of mana laws, not just because Hayul casts magic instantaneously, but because the spell trajectories were changing and merging in mid-air with living flexibility, as if they were snakes hunting their prey.